is up, DW Nation? It is the Raw after WrestleMania, so you know something had to happen. We had two returns, of course, coming from last night's Raw, and of course, we got a new number one contender that will be going against Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania Backlash. So without further ado, I'm Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and let's hop into it. So earlier in the day, we actually see an interaction between Matt Riddle and Bobby Lashley backstage. So Bobby Lashley actually gets approached by Riddle. He comes up to him and says, I think I should be the next challenger for the WWE Championship. He goes, if I remember from 3 weeks ago, you said anyone can step up to the WWE Champion. And then, before that, you said how anyone can be noticed and step up to the challenge. Well, Bobby didn't take too well of that, and he actually used Matt Riddle's head as a little bit of a rearrangement for the handlebars of Matt Riddle's scooter and left him flat laying, and then said, I'm a winner, and you, Riddle, you're just a loser, and I'll remind you of that tonight. And that just leaves MVP just confused, but we're going to get the match after all. So the opening match is actually Matt Riddle versus Bobby Lashley. While Bobby Lashley already makes his entrance as the WWE Champion. And then we have next up Matt Riddle scooting his way down. And as he's in the middle of scooting his way down, he gets attacked by Bobby Lashley. And Bobby's just beating him up all around the outside of the ring, throwing him from barricade to barricade, even putting him on his shoulders and ramming him right into the ring post. Throws him into the ring, and it looks like we might not get the match, but Matt Riddle gets up and he's ready to fight. So we get the match, the bell rings, and pretty much what was going on outside the ring just happens inside the ring, and Bobby Lashley dominates. Matt Riddle got nothing. Like, he got one or two hits. We see him end up going for a nice knee strike, dropping Bobby around the end of the match, and then going for the floating bro, but he misses. Then Bobby locks in the Hurt Lock, and that's wraps. That's the match. Bobby Lashley wins in quite dominant fashion. So our second match of the night is Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander versus the returning Viking Raiders. Yes, Ivar has been out from injury since last year sometime, or just past summer, and now they are back after Mania. So, of course, we're getting ourselves Cedric Alexander starting off for that team, and now, of course, the returning Ivar is starting off, and he's dominating Cedric. Honestly, Cedric doesn't know what hit him really. And then we end up seeing these two tag out, and Eric comes in, and thankfully, due to the chop block from Cedric Alexander from behind, we actually see Shelton Benjamin take control of Eric, and he works over Eric for a little while until Eric regains control when he goes for a judo toss going into his running knee strike, where he ends up tagging in Ivar. Ivar runs wild, and we see some nice Viking Raider tag team action when they use each other pretty much as weapons against these two, setting up for the Viking experience for the win. So next up, we have the return of Charlotte Flair. We haven't seen Charlotte in about a month and a half now because of a lot of things backstage that actually Charlotte couldn't control. But she comes out and she actually talks about how she, first of all, you could tell by her face that she was hurt. She was hurt. She wanted to be on the WrestleMania card, and she let that be known. She talks about how she should have been on the card. She is the franchise player. She is the superstar. She should have been on the card. She said it's not her fault for what's going on. She tried everything to be on the card. But it's not her fault she was put in the tag team with Asuka. It's not her fault that Rick came on Legends Night and showed out. It's not her fault that Lacey Evans got pregnant so she couldn't whoop her. It's not her fault that Asuka got challenged by Charlotte and didn't respond. And she talks about how all the women in the back, once they knew that Charlotte wasn't going to be on the card, were celebrating because they finally get an opportunity to shine. And then talks about how Rhea Ripley has become a snake for taking the opportunity of challenging Asuka and, of course, beating her in the match that Charlotte should have been in. And then calls Asuka an even bigger snake for losing the belt and then getting an automatic rematch clause, knowing that she was outclassed the night before. Then she flat out says and names all the women that were on the Mania card, from Bianca Belair to Alexa Bliss, and says none of them compare to me. And then she flat out said, go ahead and enjoy the title match that I was supposed to be in. And then she leaves. And of course, I'm a fan. I like this Charlotte. Babyface Charlotte is not good promo cutter. But heel Charlotte, oh, she is. So next up is the Raw Women's Championship rematch. We got Asuka, the challenger, versus the newly crowned champion, Rhea Ripley. And this starts off with a brawl. These two are going right after each other, all up until Rhea Ripley just takes a handful of Asuka's hair and just launches her across the ring. Now these two go back and forth. We actually see Rhea Ripley get overwhelmed by Asuka's offense momentarily, when we actually see Asuka meet Rhea into the corner with a hip strike. Then we actually see a nice spin kick and a running knee. And then, of course, while Asuka's going for her offense, she goes up on the top rope and Rhea meets her there and just drop kicks her right off the top onto the outside. Now, we come back from commercial. This actually goes into a break. We come back and these two are trading reversals. But clearly, the exhaustion from last night actually transferred over to this match. We saw a lot of miscues. We saw a lot of sloppy moves. This actually was not good and looked dangerous at one point when it looked like Asuka was going to go for a crucifix bomb, but she just drops and Rhea drops right on what it looks like her neck. This was not a pretty sight. We actually see these two end up going some more with even offense, all up until we actually see Asuka lock in the Asuka lock, where Rhea breaks this up by running right in between the turnbuckles and actually rams Asuka face first right into the top turnbuckle. Now these two meet onto the apron, trade some offense, and we actually see Asuka get the upper hand when she actually face plants Rhea Ripley onto the apron. Now while these two are just going after each other on the outside, we see Charlotte Flair. And Charlotte Flair takes out both of these two, ending up kicking both of them right into the LED boards, right on the apron area, walking off. And I'm actually glad she did this because this was not a pretty match. Now we go backstage where we actually see Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax just rewatching Mandy Rose as she slipped down the ramp on night one numerous times, just laughing and getting a nice little chuckle in. And we actually see Mandy Rose come up to Nia Jax as Shayna Baszler just likes to leave Nia Jax by herself, apparently, her whole tag team partner. And actually, Mandy Rose is like, it's okay. I learned from the experience. I even made jokes about it. And, it's hard to even see it coming. I knew there was going to be water, but I didn't expect to fall. And she goes, it's funny what happens when you least expect something. And we actually see Mandy Rose slap Nia Jax, and then her and Dana Brooke team up on Nia and actually leave her sitting onto the floor. She's getting up, Nia does, and actually looks very frustrated as we go to the next segment. In the next segment, we actually get Alexa's Playhouse. Yes, and she is explaining her actions from last night where she distracted the Fiend leading up to the RKO for Randy Orton's win at Mania. And she actually explains and takes a trip down memory lane, how she talks about how she was the lost girl from last year that actually got brought to the darkness, and actually the darkness protected her and took care of her. And she said, now what happens when the darkness disappears and the little girl realizes that she doesn't need the darkness? And she says, now what happens when the little girl actually sees the darkness is actually holding her back? And she actually introduces her new friend Lily, which is a creepy little doll. I'm not going to lie to you. It looks like a voodoo doll. And she actually says that the fun is yet to come. So it looks like we're going to get some more Fiend and Alexa Bliss war. And I'm actually open-minded to see this because later on we get ourselves Firefly Funhouse from Bray. And he's actually, looks like he's renewed. And he's preaching to everyone in the Firefly Funhouse. He said he's going to come back and he's going to return, just refresh and re-energize. So we're actually going to see the future of this, hopefully, feud very, very soon. Now, our next segment is Miz TV with special guest Maurice. And he talks about, of course, the promotion of the season premiere of The Miz and Mrs. And of course, they talk about the It Couple a little bit, but we actually get to Mania, where Miz talks about how giving he is. And he gave the spotlight to Bad Bunny and actually helped him raise his superstardom with the match that Bad Bunny performed. As, of course, he's taking credit for this, we actually see Damian Priest come out, and he says, I don't even understand why you're taking credit. He whooped you. I mean, it was on the headlines. Bad Bunny beats Miz. And he said, I was his tag partner, and I refuse to take credit for what he did because he put in the work. And of course, as this is going on, Miz spins this around on Priest. He goes, wait, you're just jealous. Where were you? You were his partner, and he outshined you. And of course, Miz goes, how about this? How about I prove myself by challenging you to a match? And Johnny Drip Drip goes, I was going to challenge him to a match. So they, of course, go into a little bigger war about who was going to challenge Damian Priest. And then Maurice goes, what are you talking about? You both can fight him. And then Damian goes, I see what's going on. So how about this? I'm going to accept this match, a 2-on-1 handicap match, because that's what you guys want. Me versus Miz and Morrison. So I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to give it to you right now. And Miz goes, wait. We were supposed to do this later. And Damian Priest is still storming down. So we're getting this match. It is signed Damian Priest versus Miz and Morrison. Now, starting off, we actually get a lot of one-sided work as Miz and Morrison are just using their numbers game and using great tag team chemistry to take out Damian Priest. Now, this all ends up biting them in the butt when Miz taunts just way too much. And Damian Priest capitalizes as he takes out John Morrison, and then he goes right after Miz. Now, we actually see a lot of singles offense from Damian Priest, where he actually ends up hitting the broken arrow on Miz and then hits the elevated chokeslam on Morrison. Now, while we actually see Damian Priest go up top, we see Miz come up and try to knock him off the top rope, but we actually see him fight him off and actually hit a nice spinning heel kick on Morrison from the top rope. Now we actually see Miz end up getting back into the ring as Morrison's taken out by Damian Priest, and it looks like Damian's about to get some nice offense in, all up until Maurice gets onto the apron and distracts Damian Priest, where we actually see Miz end up getting a roll up and using the ropes to get a pinfall over Damian Priest. So after all the Miz and Morrison action that's going on with Damian Priest, we actually get the tag team match that was made due to what happened backstage earlier between Mandy Rose, Dana Brooke, and Nia Jax. So we get Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke versus Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. Now starting off, Baszler and Jax are dominating. And when I say dominating, Dana Brooke didn't stand a chance. She was getting dominated by these two as they both use great tag team work. And we actually see Shayna Baszler start targeting Dana Brooke's left leg, going for a stretch muffler, tagging in Nia Jax. Nia Jax is just ragdogging this girl. She's throwing her up and down the ring and just hitting big slams on Dana Brooke. Now, this how it happens until Dana Brooke ends up working over and she ends up tagging in Mandy Rose. And we actually get in the ring Shayna Baszler. Mandy Rose gets a nice missile drop kick on Shayna Baszler, but Shayna Baszler takes control again as she ends up knocking in the Karakuda clutch, all for a blind tag to go into Nia Jax. Now Mandy Rose ends up going outside the ring as she breaks up the Karakuda clutch, and Nia Jax ends up regaining control. She throws her back into the ring, looks to get back into the ring, and as she gets onto the apron, Nia Jax actually trips and falls. And we actually see Mandy Rose end up laughing at Nia Jax. Nia Jax sees this and she's not too happy. So we actually see Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke end up regrouping onto the stage area. And we actually see them take the count out with Dana Brooke repeating to Mandy Rose that it's just not worth it right now. So we actually have the almighty address as we were supposed to get MVP and eventually Bobby Lashley to come out and address the entire locker room and the WWE Universe. We actually see MVP talk first, and he says he's going to come out and just address everybody right quick, and says Drew McIntyre was a great WWE champion. It might be one of the best of all time later on down the road. but he said it's just hard to even think that he's going to beat the almighty Bobby Lashley. And even says that it's okay to be number 2 when Bobby's number 1, talking about how what he predicted last Monday ended up coming to fruition, as we actually saw Bobby Lashley make the former WWE champion submit to the Hurt Lock. And of course, Drew McIntyre comes out and he flat out says, keep pumping up, Bobby said, because eventually I'm going to get my rematch and I'm just going to stomp on that head and I'm going to take back my WWE championship. As he's talking about this, out comes Braun Strowman. And MVP's just getting confused. He's like, why are these people coming out? It's supposed to be the address. So Braun Strowman comes out and says, after beating and giving the beatdown to Shane McMahon this past Saturday at Mania, he's ready to come after the WWE Championship and tells Drew it's time to get back in the back of the line. It's time for a new challenger. And of course, as he says that, out comes Randy Orton. And Randy said, The Fiend and Alexa Bliss are behind me, and I was distracted. Now I'm refocused, and it's time for me to go after what's rightfully mine as the WWE Champion. And of course, Adam Pearce comes out before any of this tops off in the ring, and he says, I like what's going on. So, of course, y'all just made it easy for me. Tonight will be a triple threat match between Randy Orton, Braun Strowman, and Drew McIntyre to decide who's going to be wrestling Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania Backlash. So next up, we got some tag team action as we get the New Day versus Elias and Jackson Ryker. In the New Day, they start messing with Elias as Elias is looking to perform his song that is dedicated to his mentor, Mr. Shane O'Mac. And as he strums his guitar, a trumpet plays. He strums it one more time, another trumpet sound. And as he goes to begin the song, we actually hear New Day Rocks on the trumpet, and we get the entrance of the New Day. And we actually come out to Kofi and Xavier Woods talking trash to Elias and Jackson Ryker, saying they're a disgrace to the tag division. They had a 2-on-1 advantage versus Braun Strowman on Saturday and still got whooped. And of course, we start talking about this, and Elias says, hold on now. Are we forgetting what happened last night? Y'all were 2 guys that got dominated by Omos and then lost the Raw championships. So, of course, New Day's getting worked up, and he said, how about this? Let's have this match to decide who the real tag team is, like the match wasn't already scheduled. But we get this match, and easily in the beginning, we actually see the New Day overwhelm Ryker and Elias as they take both of these two out to the outside of the ring and hit stereo dives going into commercial break. Now, as we come back, we actually see that Ryker and Elias have taken control, and they're looking really good, honestly, with some nice tag team action and some coherent work between the two. Now, this all happens all up until Xavier Woods flips out of a back suplex and hits a nice enziguri, hot tagging in Kofi Kingston. Now, Kofi Kingston and Elias meet into the ring, and Kofi is just overwhelming Elias with offense. And we actually see Xavier Woods take out Jackson Ryker, and we see nice tag team work from these two all up until we see the nice finish of the backbreaker stomp mix for the win for the New Day's Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston. Now it is time for the main event, and it is to decide who the #1 contender is for Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania Backlash. And it is Randy Orton versus Braun Strowman versus Drew McIntyre. Starting off as chaos early, and we actually see Randy Orton come out of the ring to let Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre go at it for a little while until he decides that he's going to come in and help Drew take out Braun Strowman. Now we actually end up seeing Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton fighting against each other as usual. And then we see Braun Strowman take control and actually knock out both of these two to the outside of the ring. Braun's thinking that he's about to hit the steamroll, and as he's running around the outside to meet Randy Orton, he's actually met by Drew McIntyre with some steel stairs. And we actually end up seeing Randy Orton end up knocking out Drew McIntyre on the ringside area to take control going into the break. Now we come back and we actually see no guy seems to look to get control, because as soon as one builds momentum, the other nips the one guy in the bud. So we actually end up seeing Randy Orton slow down the offense a little bit and slow down the pace as he takes Drew McIntyre to the outside of the ring and just tosses him everywhere around the ring, from the barricade to the post to the apron, all up until he gets to the announcer table. We actually see him start to get in something all up until Braun Strowman hits a running shoulder block to the outside. And we actually see Braun Strowman use the steel stairs to end up taking out Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. He tosses Orton back into the ring, and as he's getting in, we see Randy meet him at the ropes and hit the nice, beautiful draping DDT. And he sets him up for the RKO. Now Randy ends up hitting the RKO and looks to go for the pin and for the win over Braun Strowman. But Drew McIntyre meets Randy Orton with a sliding Claymore, and he ends up pinning Randy Orton for the win. And it looks like we are getting that rematch a lot sooner than we expected, as now number one contender is Drew McIntyre to meet Bobby at WWE Wrestlemania Backlash. Now, as he's celebrating, MVP comes out and he's at the stage area, and we actually see Drew McIntyre get taken out by T-Bar and Mace, former Retribution members, and he gets taken out, and we actually see T-Bar and Mace come out of the ring while MVP is very, very happy of the work that has occurred. So, ladies and gents, this is clearly not the same Raw after Mania like usual, where we see a lot of surprises and a lot of overall just great energy with the crowd, because we see the return of the Thunderdome. But it was overall a solid episode where we saw two returns with Charlotte Flair and the Viking Raiders, and we actually saw what looks like hopefully the setup for a fresh start for Raw after WrestleMania Backlash, because it looks like for WrestleMania Backlash we're going to get a lot of rematches from the Raw side. I'm very curious to see what we're going to get from the SmackDown side, but it's okay. I was definitely okay with this. This was a nice setup for a hopeful future where we got a nice little hopeful feud between The Fiend and Alexa Bliss. And then, of course, we saw some nice setups as the New Day looks to regain some traction into the tag division. And it looks like the tag division is going to get a resurgence with some nice bulky teams coming in. But that's, of course, my hopefulness coming out of this. There's no telling what WWE is actually planning. But it's okay, as, of course, you guys see that there's a new line up. As, of course, I'm now doing the Raw recap. Jordan's going to be continuing the NXT recap. And Asante is going to be now doing the SmackDown recap. And, of course, as the healthy alternative of AEW, we're going to see me and Jordan end up alternating the recaps between us two. And, of course, we're now bringing you guys the week's wrap, where I dive into the wrestling news that happens outside of the ropes on a Sunday and Monday basis. But until next time, ladies and gents, I'm Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and that was wrestling.